Back, I feel like I've been away forever when I take some time off, but it felt really good. And as you know, my son lives in Rancho Cucamonga, but because the bridge was down, we met him in San Diego instead of where he lives. And interesting, because when I came back, there was something on Facebook, and Coyote saw it first, an article from the New Yorker. There was a man who wrote about how all the bridges in our country that are falling apart and need repair, and yet the whole focus is on building walls. Ooh, metaphysically, is that a doozy? Metaphysically, wow! We are all about building walls instead of bridges to each other's hearts and to the divine itself. I'm getting goosebumps as I'm even thinking about it. Well, we continue our series. This is the last day today on the eye of the storm. You know, living and how to handle conflict. And what a perfect beginning for that, because there are no enemies. In the world of duality, we love to see anything opposite as an enemy that we have to build a wall around instead of a bridge. There are no enemies, and the universe conspires for our good. The universe conspires to bring to us every person and situation that would enable us to build a bridge back to our divine nature. Of course, those things that our soul or the universe draws to us does not always look like fun, but they're there so that we can finally bridge our way back to God. What a way of looking at things. I always say I have stretch marks in my growth this lifetime, and all the things that I've had to accept and work through that have come to me, both people and situations. But I know my soul is conspiring for my good if I can release and let go. Even those perceived enemies, even those perceived challenges. I have one this week. You know, we love Coyote, our son. And he's been living with us since he graduated from high school. And, you know, we keep thinking maybe he'll grow up someday. And some days we get a little anxious that it isn't happening too soon. And this week, the words from A Course in Miracles came to me so strongly. And I instead of reading them, I'm going to paraphrase them. Who am I to argue with what God drew to me to build that pathway back to God? Who am I to argue that it should be different, that there should be some change there? Whatever is before us is there to build a bridge back to our divine nature. And don't we love to argue and resist what's in front of us? Don't we love to say, this God, if you could just rearrange this, everything would be fine, but it's there for our good. And we don't like conflict because it feels like it shouldn't be there. You know, I came from Tulsa, and there were 2 Unity churches in Tulsa. You wouldn't think there would be. It isn't that big of a city, but there were 2 Unity churches. And each one was as opposite as night and day. Ours was a lovey-dovey church. We were lovey-dovey to the point of nauseousness. You know, some people couldn't handle all that lovey-doveyness. The other church was full of conflict years ago. It's no longer that way. They got rid of one minister after another. They were always having conflict. And from appearances, it appeared that ours was the better church. Us lovey-dovey people that never had conflict. But you know what? That other church got a lot more done. That energy of opposites. They were always getting things done. You know, our church was so lovey-dovey when it came time to repaint the sanctuary. We kept the same Pepto-Bismol pink because we didn't want to make it a conflict. You know, we didn't want to offend anybody. We kept the same color to avoid conflict. But there's a certain level of conflict that is necessary in the creative process. First force, second force, third force. It's all about how life is on this earth plane we live on. I think the greatest example was Michelangelo and the Pope. If any of you have been to the Sistine Chapel. Wow, those two fought all the way through when Michelangelo was painting that beautiful chapel. And I wonder sometimes what it would have been like if the Pope would have given him free rein. You know, the theology of it would probably have been totally different. But it's interesting that what an artistic, creative outcome, whether you believe in the theology or not, came from that energy of conflict. Conflict is not always a bad thing, but most of us avoid it like the plague. And Reverend Simmons in the book, The Eye of the Storm, said, unless you had parents like Mary and Joseph and knew that you were the Son of God, you probably avoid or don't know how to handle conflict. We learn very dysfunctional behaviors in how to handle conflict. Dysfunctional behaviors like control or be controlled, the need to be right, attack and defend because we've been denied, deprived, persecuted, and abused. Isn't that what we learned? I love to share stories of my 5 sisters and how we all lived together those years. And of course, the old farmhouses, we didn't have as many bedrooms as sisters, so we always had to share a room. And I remember my sister Jean and I were as opposite as day and night. And did you do this when you were growing up with siblings, those of you who had some? Did you draw a line down your room? This is your side of the room. This is my side of the room. You stay there, and even the bed. We had a fake line down the middle of it. My side of the bed and your side of the bed. Jean and I laugh at that now because we really love each other. But that whole idea of seeing each other as the enemy and building walls to separate us, how silly that was. We can laugh at it now. I used to be so afraid of conflict until I realized it wasn't going away. I get done with one thing, and when I say conflict, anything out there that we don't like, I get rid of one thing and there'd be another. And I used to try to avoid that, but I had to make peace with it because I realized, first of all, conflict is not going away. And that all I had to do was face it and deal with it. Face it and deal with it and receive the blessing from it. And that whole approach has made such a difference in my life. In The Eye of the Storm, Reverend Simmons says, if you can be in an experience that is normally stressful or upsetting and move your attention to your center or your spirit where the situation can be experienced differently, this shift in awareness is everything. From an outer focus to an inner focus. From an adversary perception to a perception of oneness. And as we let go of those perceptions, the freedom of spirit comes forth. Because normally we're stuck in the memories of the past. Well, this is what happened to me then, this is going to happen now. And as soon as we let go of those past memories, we see possibilities that we couldn't see before. And the outcome is totally different. We find a color besides pink to paint the sanctuary as soon as we can step out of that. And the biggest thing is we have to let go of attachment and judgment. Because to everything out there, we're either attached or judging it, one or the other. And the freedom is in letting go of both. To trust the flow of life, that whatever is before me has come to me for a reason, to build a bridge back to my divinity. And if I just don't resist it, and accept it, it will free me up. I love when the Course in Miracles says, you cannot be tired, but your constant judgment is wearying you. You cannot be tired without constant judgment. There was a great story in Reverend Simmons' book. It was about a golfer. Now, I'm not into golf, but some of you golfers may know. Let's see, Tom, you're a golfer. Did you know you're not a golfer? Who's a golfer in here? Do we have any? Okay, Doug and Ron, you're golfers. Donna, you're a golfer. Do you know a man by the name of Robert DeVenso, something like that? Anyway, years ago, he was a golfer. And he won a tournament. And he got a check, a big check for winning this tournament. And a woman came up to him and gave him this story of, oh, my child is dying, and I don't have enough money for treatment for her. I need some money. You know what? He gave her that check from the tournament that he had just won. Now you know where the story's going, don't you? He finds out later it was a fraud. The woman had no child. There was no money. Do you know how he handled it? He was delighted. He was absolutely delighted. He said, do you mean there's no baby who's dying? Oh, that's the best news I've had all week. Can you imagine? No judgment, no attachment. He gave because it was his to give. He extended divine love. That's all he needed to do. No judgment, no attachment. What a lesson. What a lesson that man was to the rest of us. Wow. Feeling judgment can be exhausting, and it keeps us in resistance, and it keeps us stuck in conflict. Instead of giving up control, giving up the need to be right, and choosing peace instead. Now, we have to heal our beliefs around conflict in order to do that. And one of them is that there's no competition. No competition at all. Reverend Simmons said the purpose of relationships is to be the source of support and encouragement and empowerment to each other. We're here to support each other. You know, we have 2 New Thought churches here too, Amado and here. And many people go back and forth before both, and I love that. And Donna loves that. And Donna and I are both friends, and we don't see any competition. What's good for them is good for us, because it builds a stronger New Thought community. There is no competition between any of us. The law of supply is there is always enough for all of us. And cleaning your plate does not feed the children in China. Cleaning your plate does not make it, you know, it's not I have so you don't. It's not I win, you lose. It's a win-win. The law is there for everyone. You cannot take from me what is mine in consciousness, and I cannot take from you what is yours in consciousness. My having does not take from you, but my giving, my sharing opens the flow. Beautiful, beautiful law. Now, religions have great conflict. Nothing like going to a church to find conflict, right? Especially between religions. I mean, everybody says never talk about politics or religion, right? Because as soon as you do out there, there's arguments. Well, there was a great thing on the line that I found about 2 churches that were across from each other, and they both had these church signs. You know, the church signs where you put a funny little saying or a cutesy little saying to draw people to your church. Well, it must have been after the movie about the dogs going to heaven, because Our Lady of Martyrs Catholic Church put on their sign, all dogs go to heaven. Great idea. It went with that Disney movie at that time. Beulah Cumberland Presbyterian Church across the street did not like that sign, and they put on their sign, only humans go to heaven, read the Bible. Well, Our Lady of Martyrs Church couldn't let that be, and they changed their sign to say, God loves all his creations, dogs included. Well, Beulah Cumberland Presbyterian Church had the need to be right, and they changed their sign to, dogs don't have souls, this is not open to debate. I love that line, this is not open to debate. Well, Our Lady of Martyrs Catholic Church, rather be right than be at peace, said Catholic dogs go to heaven. Presbyterian dogs can talk to their pastor. Well, that really riled up Beulah Cumberland Presbyterian Church, so they changed their sign to say, converting to Catholicism does not magically grant your dog a soul. Our Lady of Martyrs Catholic Church, not to be outdone, said free dogs with conversion. Beulah Cumberland Presbyterian Church finally wanted the final last word. They said dogs are animals. There aren't any rocks in heaven either, which of course made Our Lady of Martyrs Catholic Church come right back to where they started. All rocks go to heaven. Now, that was such a beautiful thing that once we get into conflict, it just perpetuates. There's no win to this, is there? This argument would go on forever with nobody winning. Once you engage in conflict from that standpoint of adversaries, there's no win. And metaphysically, of course, the real enemy is where? All in the mind. The real enemy. The conflict is always in the state of mind. The whole metaphysical story of Joshua entering the promised land was a story of consciousness. He didn't go in they didn't go into the promised land saying, honey, I'm home. No, they fought and killed their way into it. But before they went into the promised land, they had to cross the River Jordan. And this is the best part. Metaphysically, the River Jordan is that stream of thought. When you come to the edge of the waters of the Jordan, that stream of thought, you shall stand in the Jordan. The living God who without fail will drive out from you your enemies. And where are the enemies? In the mind. When you stand in that center of light of your divinity, instead of engaging into the adversarial behavior, you are free from your enemies. And where are your enemies? In your mind. Any thought of an adversary blocks the flow of the divine. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. And it will drive out any adversarial thought. There is a stream of thought constantly flowing through the subconscious, made up of good, bad, and indifferent thoughts, which is typified in Scripture by the River Jordan. This thought stream has to be crossed before the children of Israel can go to the Promised Land. The stream of thought is also known as the adverse mind, or adversary. And when the adverse thought is removed, it expresses as life current, vitality, prosperity, harmony, good. The flow is there. Adverse mind has spread itself over the underlying God consciousness and has dammed up the free flow of the divine energies in man, cutting off the divine expression. But when we let go and stand in the truth of our being, there is health, prosperity, abundance, flow. Stand in the truth of our being. There's no gospel song. Amber's going to sing it one of these next Sundays called Stand. And the words are, tell me what to do when you've done all you can and it seems like it's never enough. Tell me what to do when you've given your all and it seems like you can't make it through. You just stand. Let's take that into prayer. You stand in the truth of your being. You stand in the all-sufficiency of the divine. You stand in your wholeness and self-worth. And we allow that Spirit. Pour yourself in me, Holy Spirit, that I might release and let go of any ego thought of adversity and hold to the truth of the oneness, building bridges, not walls, between us, and allowing those bridges to take us back to the divine. Have your way in this, God. Have your way in this. And we say thank you, God, in the nature of the Christ. Amen.